I'm calling the police." Marcus Thompson stared at the bank manager, holding his $1 million check like it was evidence of a crime. The check was real. TechVenture Industries had bought his company yesterday. CodeBridge Solutions, 7 years of work, turned into one piece of paper with 6 zeros. But Richard Whitmore, branch manager at FirstLight Bank, saw a black man in a hoodie and jeans, and decided the check had to be fake. Subscribe right now if you want to see a bank manager's face when he realizes he just called the cops on a millionaire. This gets good. Marcus had banked at FirstLight for 15 years. Since he was 23, making $42,000 a year as a junior developer. He'd deposited business checks here for 7 years, 5-figure amounts, never had a problem. Until today. Until the number got big enough that a black man having it seemed impossible. "Sir, there's no need to call anyone," Marcus said calmly. Training kicked in. The training every black man learned growing up. Keep your voice level, don't make sudden movements, don't give them a reason. You can verify the check right now. Call TechVenture. The numbers printed right there. Richard held the check like it might contaminate him. For amounts this large, we follow specific protocols. And frankly, Mr. Thompson, this raises red flags. What red flags? A check of this size, made out to an individual, no corporate documentation, no advance notice to the bank. I've been your customer for 15 years. You can pull up my account history right now. That doesn't change the fact that this appears suspicious. Marcus felt his phone in his pocket, started recording, because he knew where this was going. Had seen it play out 1,000 times in 1,000 different ways. Black man, money, white authority figure assuming it couldn't be real. Suspicious how? Marcus kept his tone even. Specifically, what about this check is suspicious besides the amount? Richard's face flushed. I'm following standard fraud prevention protocols. Have you called the police on other customers depositing large checks? That's not relevant. It's completely relevant, because I think you saw a black man with $1 million check and decided it had to be fraud. Instead of spending 5 minutes to verify it. I don't appreciate your tone, Mr. Thompson, and I don't appreciate being treated like a criminal for depositing legitimate payment. But here we are. The other customers in the bank had noticed now, were watching, some uncomfortable, some curious, all witnessing a scene that happened every day in America but rarely got acknowledged. Jessica, the young white teller who'd first taken Marcus's check, stood behind Richard, looking like she wanted to disappear. She hadn't questioned him, just saw the amount, panicked, and called her manager. Richard pulled out his phone, dialed. "Yes, this is Richard Whitmore, branch manager at FirstLight Bank, Columbus Avenue. I need officers at my location. I have a customer attempting to deposit what I believe is a fraudulent check for $1 million. He's becoming hostile. I'm standing here calmly," Marcus said, still recording, "asking you to verify a legitimate check. That's not hostile. The customer is recording without permission, refusing to leave when asked. I haven't been asked to leave. And recording is my legal right." Richard turned his back, continued speaking to the police, gave them the address, probably gave them a description that included black male, mid-30s, wearing casual clothing, in a tone that suggested threat. Marcus stood at the counter and waited, because running would look guilty, leaving would look guilty. Everything except standing perfectly still and hoping the police believed him over a bank manager would look guilty. His phone buzzed. His lawyer, David Chen, probably checking if the deposit went through. Marcus ignored it, kept recording, kept his hands visible, kept breathing. Two police officers arrived 6 minutes later, both white, both with hands near their weapons as they scanned the bank and located Marcus. "Sir, please put your phone down," the older officer said. "I'm recording this interaction. That's my constitutional right." "Sir, put the phone down or we're going to have a problem." Marcus kept the phone steady, kept his voice calm. "I'm not committing a crime. I'm a customer trying to deposit a check. The bank manager called you instead of verifying it, and I'm documenting that." The younger officer, Officer Chen, her name tag said, glanced at her partner. Some unspoken communication. The older officer, Bradley, relaxed slightly but kept his authority posture. "What's your name?" Bradley asked. "Marcus Thompson." He moved slowly, deliberately, to pull out his wallet. Handed over his driver's license. "I'm here to deposit payment for my company, CodeBridge Solutions. We were acquired yesterday by TechVenture Industries for $1 million. Bradley examined the ID, handed it to Chen to run. "The bank manager says you're trying to deposit a fraudulent check. The check isn't fraudulent, it's legitimate. He can verify it by making one phone call. Instead, he called you. Can I see the check?" Marcus handed it over. Bradley studied it. Marcus watched his face, watched the skepticism, the doubt, the same look Richard Whitmore had given him. "TechVenture Industries," Bradley read aloud. "You're saying this is real?" "I'm saying it's real. Call them. The number's on the check. Takes 5 minutes." Chen returned. "No warrants, no priors, records clean." Bradley looked at Marcus again, at his hoodie, his jeans, his sneakers that were expensive if you knew sneakers but looked old if you didn't. Doing the math, that didn't add up in his head. Black man plus casual clothes plus $1 million check equals something wrong. "Mr. Thompson, where did you really get this check?" "I told you. My company was acquired. This is payment. Do you have documentation?" "Do I need documentation to deposit money into my own account? Or is this special treatment reserved for customers who look like me?" Bradley's expression hardened. "I don't appreciate what you're implying." "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. I'm a 15-year customer. I've never had problems before. But today, with this amount, suddenly I'm suspicious enough to warrant police. Why? Because $1 million checks raise red flags. For everyone, or just for black men?" Chen cleared her throat. "Mr. Thompson, we're just trying to verify the situation. If the check is legitimate, then verify it. Call TechVenture right now. Confirm they issued it. And then explain why this required police instead of a 5-minute phone call." Bradley pulled out his phone, made the call. Marcus watched him step away, speak to someone at TechVenture's finance department, watched his expression change, surprise, discomfort, embarrassment. He returned. "The check is legitimate. TechVenture confirms they issued it yesterday as payment for acquisition of CodeBridge Solutions. So I can deposit it?" "Yes, there's no fraud." Marcus pocketed his phone, looked at Richard Whitmore, who'd been watching from his office. "I'm closing all my accounts. Checking, savings, business. 15 years of loyalty, and you treated me like a criminal the moment my success made you uncomfortable. Mr. Thompson, that's not necessary. It's absolutely necessary, because you saw a black man with $1 million and decided it couldn't be real. That assumption just cost you a customer who was about to be significantly wealthy." Marcus turned to the officers. "Am I free to go?" Bradley nodded. "You're free to go." "Sorry for the inconvenience." "Inconvenience," Marcus repeated. That's one way to describe being treated like a criminal for being successful. He walked out of FirstLight Bank with the check still in his pocket, the recording still on his phone, and absolute certainty that this wasn't over. Because some lessons needed to be expensive, and Richard Whitmore had just enrolled in the most expensive lesson of his career. Outside the bank, Marcus stood on the sidewalk, with adrenaline flooding his system. His hands shook, not fear, rage. 19 years of similar moments compressed into this one, being followed in stores, questioned in professional spaces, treated like he didn't belong in rooms where he'd earned his place. His phone rang. David Chen, his lawyer. Did the deposit go through? No. Bank manager called the cops on me. Silence. Then, he did what? Decided $1 million check from a black guy had to be fraud. Called police before verifying. I recorded everything. Send me the video. Right now. And Marcus? Don't post it anywhere. Not yet. Let me review it first. We need to build this case carefully. Marcus sent the file. 7 minutes of footage. Richard Whitmore's suspicion. The police arriving. The verification proving Marcus right. All of it documented. How long do I wait? Marcus asked. 48 hours. I'll review the recording, research FirstLight's policies, and prepare a legal strategy. Then we light them up. Marcus opened his banking app, started transferring funds to his backup account. If FirstLight didn't want his business, fine. Plenty of banks would. Then he opened Twitter. Didn't post yet, but drafted a thread. Today I tried to deposit a check for $1M payment for my company that was just acquired. I've banked at FirstLight for 15 years. The manager called the police on me instead of verifying the check. Because a black man with $1 million is suspicious. Thread to follow. He saved it as a draft. 48 hours. Then Richard Whitmore and FirstLight Bank would discover that humiliating black customers in 2025 came with consequences they couldn't afford. That evening, Marcus met his co-founder, Jamal Richards, at a bar in Brooklyn. Jamal had deposited his $500,000 check that morning without incident. At a different bank, different neighborhood, different assumptions. "I'm sorry, man," Jamal said after Marcus explained what happened. "That's insane. That's America. You deposit $500,000 in a suit in Midtown, no problem. I deposit $1 million in a hoodie in my neighborhood. Suddenly it's fraud. What are you going to do? Sue? David's building a case. Discrimination, civil rights violations, whatever we can throw at them. Good. Burn it down." Marcus drank his beer. Thought about the 15 years he'd banked at FirstLight. The business checks he'd deposited. The relationship he'd built. All meaningless the moment the number got big enough to trigger assumptions about who could have that kind of money. "You know what the worst part is?" Marcus said. "Richard Whitmore probably thinks he did nothing wrong, thinks he was just being careful, following protocols. Doesn't even register that he treated me differently because of my skin. Racism doesn't need intention, just impact. Yeah. And the impact is I got police called on me for depositing my own money. That's going to be expensive for them." Jamal raised his beer. "Too expensive lessons." Marcus clinked bottles. "Too expensive lessons." But what Marcus didn't know was that Richard Whitmore wasn't waiting for the lawsuit. He was already building his defense, already preparing to paint Marcus as the aggressor. And the story he was telling was about to make everything more complicated. That night, Richard Whitmore sat in his home office in Westchester, reviewing security footage from the bank, looking for something, anything that would justify calling the police. What he found made him nervous. Marcus had been calm, polite, had only pulled out his phone after being threatened with police. On video, Richard looked exactly like what he was, a manager who'd assumed a black man couldn't have $1 million check. But Richard had spent 22 years at FirstLight. He knew how to manage perception. He opened his laptop and emailed corporate legal. Incident today involving potential fraud attempt. Customer attempted to deposit suspicious check for $1M. Standard protocols triggered. Customer became hostile when questioned. Recorded interaction without permission. Police called for safety. Check verified as legitimate, but customer's behavior raises concerns. Recommend documentation in case of litigation. Not exactly true, but not exactly false. Marcus had questioned him, had pulled out a phone, had spoken about complaints. All of that could be framed as hostile if you wanted to see it that way. Richard hit send, then called FirstLight's PR department. Because if this went public, and his instinct said it would, the bank needed to control the narrative first. Andrea Walsh, the PR director, answered, "Richard, it's 9 p.m. I have a situation. Black customer tried to deposit a large check. I followed protocols. He got hostile, recorded me without permission, made racism accusations. Police called. Check was legit, but his behavior was concerning. Did he threaten anyone? Not explicitly, but the tone was aggressive. And he's closing his accounts, which means he's planning something. Like what? Like a lawsuit, like social media, like exactly the kind of nightmare that destroys corporate reputations." Andrea typed. "What's his name?" "Marcus Thompson. Sold his company for $1 million. Has accounts with us 15 years. And you called police when he tried to deposit the payment?" "I called police when he became hostile during verification." "Richard, that's not going to play well if he goes public." "I know. That's why I'm calling. We need to control the message. Do you have documentation showing you've called police on white customers depositing large checks?" Richard was silent. "That's what I thought," Andrea said. "Here's what happens tomorrow. You call that customer. Apologize profusely. Offer him premium banking. Whatever it takes to make this go away quietly." "I tried," he refused. "Then we're in damage control. Send me everything. And Richard, pray he doesn't have a good lawyer. Because if this becomes a discrimination case, FirstLight settles. And settlements come out of someone's budget. Usually the branch manager who created the problem." The call ended. Richard sat in his office and realized calling the police on Marcus Thompson might have been the worst decision of his career. 48 hours later, Marcus hit send. "Today I tried to deposit a check for $1M payment for my company that was just acquired. I've banked at FirstLight for 15 years. The manager called the police on me instead of verifying the check. Because a black man with $1 million is suspicious. Thread incoming." He attached a 30-second clip. Richard examining the check, looking at Marcus with clear suspicion, saying, "This raises red flags." The thread continued. "I've deposited business checks here for 7 years, never had problems, but $1 million, suddenly I'm fraud. Not worth a 5-minute call to verify, just call the cops." Let me be clear, a bank manager saw a black man in casual clothes with a large check and decided it must be fake. Didn't verify, just assumed crime and called police. The cops arrived. I gave my ID, clean record. They called TechVenture. Check was legit. But I still had to prove I wasn't a criminal to deposit my own money. I'm closing my accounts. 15 years means nothing when you're treated like a threat for being successful. I'm sharing this because I'm not the only black person this has happened to. If you're a black entrepreneur, you know, the looks, the questions, the assumption your success is illegitimate. This is banking while black in 2025. I have the full video, police report, everything documented. At FirstLight Bank, your manager cost you a customer and exposed the discrimination your protocols enable. The thread went viral in under an hour. 10,000 retweets, 50,000 likes. Hundreds of comments from black professionals sharing their own stories. TechCrunch picked it up. Black tech founder calls out bank discrimination. After $1M check questioned, CNN called. The New York Times called. David Chen fielded requests while FirstLight's corporate office entered crisis mode. Andrea Walsh sat in emergency session with FirstLight's CEO, General Counsel, and Communications Head. How bad? CEO Thomas Brennan asked. Terrible, Andrea said. Marcus Thompson's thread has 6 million views. The video shows our manager treating him exactly like he described. Media coverage is universally negative. Customer service is flooded. Social media is a disaster. What's our response? Legally, we can't say much. General Counsel Margaret Cho said, Mr. Thompson is building a discrimination case. Anything we say publicly could be used against us. Oh, so we say nothing while our reputation burns? We release a standard statement, Andrea suggested. We take discrimination seriously, we're investigating, we don't tolerate bias. Corporate speak, that makes us look guilty. Silence makes us look guiltier. What about Whitmore? Margaret pulled up Richard's incident report. He claims he followed protocols, says Thompson became hostile, that police were for safety. Does video support that? No. Video shows a calm customer asking reasonable questions and a manager who assumed fraud without verification. If this goes to court, we lose. Then we settle. Settlements run 7 figures in discrimination cases, Margaret countered. Plus, it looks like admission of guilt. Could open us to similar claims. So what do? Fire Whitmore. Issue a statement saying his actions don't reflect our values. Offer Thompson formal apology and premium banking. Hope he accepts and drops the case. And if he doesn't, then we go to court. And we lose. Brennan rubbed his face. How did we get here? We got here, Andrea said quietly, because a manager saw a black man and made assumptions based on race instead of facts. Marcus received the call next morning. Margaret Cho, FirstLight's General Counsel. Mr. Thompson, I'm calling to offer formal apology on behalf of FirstLight Bank. Your treatment was unacceptable and doesn't reflect our values. Marcus had David on speaker. Is that right? Yes. We've investigated. Branch manager Richard Whitmore has been terminated. We're implementing training on unconscious bias. Training, Marcus repeated. That's your solution. We're also offering settlement, full account reinstatement with premium status, complimentary services for life, monetary settlement for your distress, and commitment to work with community organizations on systemic issues. David muted the call. They're offering settlement. We can negotiate numbers. Marcus shook his head. I don't want their money. I want accountability. You can have both. Marcus unmuted. Miss Cho, firing one manager doesn't fix the problem. You have policies that enable this discrimination. Training won't fix that. What would you like? Public accountability. Release data on how often you call police on customers. Broken down by race. Prove this was isolated and not a pattern. Silence. That data is confidential. Then make it not confidential. If FirstLight believes its policies aren't discriminatory, prove it. Release the data. Let independent auditors analyze your practices. Show this was an exception. That's significant. So, is being treated like a criminal. I'm not interested in quiet settlement. I want systemic change. Or I take this to court and let discovery force you to produce the data anyway. I'll need to discuss with our executive team. You have 72 hours. After that, we file suit. Marcus ended the call, looked at David. Too aggressive. Perfect. You just put them in an impossible position. Either they admit policies are discriminatory by refusing data, or they release data that probably shows exactly what you're alleging. You think the data will show a pattern? Banks don't call police on white customers depositing large checks. They call private wealth managers. But black customers, they get verification protocols that look like discrimination. If FirstLight releases data, it'll prove your point. And if they don't, discovery, subpoena records, force them to produce what they won't give voluntarily. Marcus walked to the window. I want this bigger than me. I don't want settlement that makes my problem go away while everyone else's stays. I want FirstLight to change. Or be an example of what happens when you don't. That'll cost you time, energy, maybe the TechVenture acquisition. If publicity gets too much, then that's what it costs. David smiled. All right. Let's burn it down properly. 72 hours passed. FirstLight didn't respond. On hour 73, David filed federal lawsuit in Southern District of New York. 47 pages detailing not just Marcus's experience but a pattern of discriminatory practices. David had been busy, connected with civil rights organizations, found 12 other customers, all people of color who'd experienced similar treatment, built a class action that wasn't just about Marcus Thompson. It was about systemic discrimination hiding behind protocols. The lawsuit demanded full disclosure of FirstLight's data on police calls, account freezes, and suspicious transaction reports by customer race. Independent audit by civil rights organization, with full access to policies and training. $5 million for compensation fund, plus punitive damages. Headlines hit within hours. Tech entrepreneurs' bank case becomes federal class action. FirstLight faces lawsuit over racial profiling. Marcus Thompson. This is about more than my check. Marcus did interviews. Always brought it back to bigger picture. He told CNN, I'm fortunate, I had resources, a lawyer, a platform. Most people don't. They close accounts and move on because fighting feels impossible. I'm fighting because I can. And because every person treated like a criminal for being successful while black deserves their story told. He told NBC, banks are gatekeepers to economic opportunity. When gatekeepers apply different standards based on race, they're not just discriminating. They're denying access to the American dream. He told The Times, Richard Whitmore didn't wake up planning to be racist, but he didn't have to. The racism was built into the system, into assumptions that black success is suspicious. Firing him doesn't fix that. Changing the system does. FirstLight moved to dismiss. Judge Patricia Williams, black woman, 15 years on federal bench, denied the motion. Plaintiff has presented sufficient evidence suggesting pattern of discriminatory treatment, warranting full discovery. Defendant's argument that one employee's actions cannot reflect systemic issues ignores well-documented patterns of racial profiling in financial services. Public interest in transparency outweighs claimed privacy concerns. Motion denied. Discovery shall proceed. FirstLight appealed. lost, and suddenly faced something they'd never faced. Legal requirement to open their records and prove verification protocols weren't just polite racism. Discovery took 4 months. David Chen's team uncovered exactly what Marcus suspected. David threw the document across the conference table. 847 times, he said. FirstLight called police on customers 847 times in 5 years. Marcus looked up from his laptop. And 71%, David continued, black customers, who represent 12% of their customer base. Marcus stared at the numbers, not as statistics, as people. 847 moments like his. Filed suspicious activity reports on black customers at 8.3 times the rate of white customers for equivalent transactions. David read, enhanced verification protocols 12.7 times more frequently. This isn't one bad manager, Marcus said. This is policy, systematic, documented, deliberate. The internal emails made it worse. Managers discussing those customers with clear racial coding, training materials using urban clientele and high-risk demographics, everyone understood, meant black and Latino. Performance reviews praising managers for vigilance about fraud in minority neighborhoods, while criticizing managers in white neighborhoods for being too permissive. FirstLight hadn't just discriminated against Marcus Thompson. They'd built a system designed to treat black wealth as suspicious by default. Settlement negotiations began 6 months after Marcus first walked into that bank. FirstLight's attorneys knew they'd lost. Data too clear, patterns too obvious, documents too damaging. They offered $3 million for compensation fund. David countered at 8. Settled at $5 million, plus full public release of discrimination data, independent audit by NAACP, legal defense fund, mandatory bias training designed by civil rights experts, not corporate consultants, civil rights advisory board with authority to review and change policies, annual public reporting on demographic data, and one thing Marcus insisted on, formal public apology, not from lawyers, from the CEO, in person, taking full responsibility. FirstLight's attorneys balked. Our CEO doesn't do public apologies. Liability issue. Then you don't have settlement, Marcus said. Your CEO either admits your bank discriminated, or we go to trial. 2 days later, FirstLight agreed. The press conference was at NAACP Legal Defense Fund offices. Thomas Brennan, FirstLight's CEO, stood at a podium looking aged by 6 months. Marcus sat front row, David beside him. Behind them, 12 other plaintiffs. Behind them, reporters documenting what happened when a black entrepreneur refused to accept discrimination quietly. Brennan read from prepared remarks. On behalf of FirstLight Bank, I offer full formal apology to Marcus Thompson and every customer who experienced discrimination at our institution. Data uncovered during this lawsuit makes clear we failed to live up to our values of equal treatment. He looked directly at Marcus. Mr. Thompson, you came to our bank as a loyal 15-year customer. You brought legitimate payment earned through years of hard work. Instead of processing with the respect you deserved, our manager called police. That was wrong, discriminatory, and reflected systemic failures I, as CEO, am ultimately responsible for. We're implementing every reform in the settlement, releasing all data, submitting to independent oversight, creating $5 million compensation fund. But more than that, we're committing to becoming a different bank. One that measures success not just by profit, but by how we treat every customer. Brennan stepped away, walked directly to Marcus, extended his hand. Marcus stood, shook it firmly, acknowledging without absolving. "Thank you," Brennan said quietly. "Don't thank me," Marcus replied. "Thank the system that forced you to be accountable, and make sure your reforms last longer than this news cycle." 3 weeks later, Marcus received an unexpected call. "Mr. Thompson, Richard Whitmore." Marcus almost hung up. Curiosity stopped him. "What do you want?" "To apologize, personally, not through lawyers. I want you to know I'm sorry. You cost me 6 months, treated me like a criminal, called police for depositing my own money. And now you want to apologize? I know it's not enough, but I need to say it. What I did was wrong. I made assumptions about you based on appearance, based on race, justified it as protocols, when really it was prejudice dressed in professional language. I lost my job," Richard continued. "My wife left me. Can't get hired anywhere because everyone knows. I deserve all that. But the worst part is knowing I hurt you, made you feel like you didn't belong where you had every right to be. I can't undo it. But I need you to know I understand, and I'm sorry. Why are you really calling? I have a daughter, 16. Last week a teacher accused her of plagiarizing an essay. Said the writing was too sophisticated for her level. Didn't believe she could produce work that good. What does that have to do with me? My daughter's adopted. She's black. For the first time, I understood what it feels like to watch someone you love be treated like they're less than they are. To watch assumptions get made based on appearance. And I realized that's what I did to you." Marcus leaned back. "Did you defend her?" "I tore into that teacher and principal, demanded apology, threatened to sue, made sure everyone knew questioning my daughter's abilities was unacceptable. So you understand now." "I understand I've been on the wrong side my entire career. I can't fix that, but I can try to do better. I'm working with a non-profit now, teaching financial literacy in underserved communities. Doesn't pay much, but at least I'm not causing harm. Your apology doesn't change what happened, doesn't give me back 6 months, doesn't erase the humiliation. I know, but I appreciate you calling, not because I forgive you, maybe I never will, but because you did the work to understand why what you did was wrong. Thank you for taking my call. Richard, your daughter, what's her name?" "Maya. Tell Maya that a black man accused of fraud for depositing $1 million check says her essay was probably brilliant. Tell her not to let anyone make her feel less than she is. Tell her the world needs her voice." Richard's voice cracked. "I will. Thank you." 2 months later, Marcus spoke at a banking industry conference. Topic: Diversity, Equity and Inclusion in Financial Services. He stood on stage in front of 300 banking executives and told his story. The check, the assumptions, the police, the lawsuit, the data proving what he'd suspected. Then he made them uncomfortable. "Most of you think this could never happen at your bank, but the data says otherwise. Every major bank has been sued for discriminatory lending. Every major bank has settled racial profiling cases. And every major bank has executives who think they're different while their policies produce identical outcomes." He let that sit. "Here's my challenge. Go back. Pull your data. Look at who gets questioned, who gets reported, who gets called suspicious. Break it down by race. And if you find patterns, and you will fix them. Not for PR, not to avoid lawsuits, but because it's right. And if you can't, if your institutions are so invested in how things have always been, then step aside. Because the Marcus Thompsons of the world are building wealth anyway. And we'll build it at banks that actually want our business. Applause was polite, uncomfortable. But in the back, 3 black executives, the only 3 in the room, stood and clapped. Not politely, with recognition. After, one approached. Woman, 45, power suit, expression that said she'd fought her own battles. Mr. Thompson, I'm Keisha Williams, VP Commercial Lending at Metro Financial. What you did matters. I've been in banking 20 years, watched colleagues get questioned, passed over, treated like they don't belong, stayed quiet because speaking up felt too expensive. And now I'm pulling our data. If it shows what I think it shows, I'm bringing it to our CEO. If he won't fix it, I'm bringing it to the press. Because you proved fighting works. And I'm tired of staying quiet. Then fight. And when you need help, call me. This isn't over. FirstLight was one bank. The system that created FirstLight is still operating everywhere else. I will. And Marcus? Thank you for refusing to disappear. 1 year after walking into FirstLight with $1 million check, Marcus stood in Beacon Community Financial Offices, the black-owned bank, where he'd eventually deposited that check, and announced something new. I'm investing $250,000 to establish the Codebridge Banking Justice Fund. Free legal representation for people who experience discrimination in financial services. Because what happened to me shouldn't require wealth to fight. Everyone deserves justice. Jamal Richards matched his investment. Together they seeded a fund that would pay civil rights attorneys to take discrimination cases pro bono. Banking discrimination isn't rare, Marcus told reporters. It's common. Happens every day to black and brown customers, treated like threats. Most never fight, because the system makes fighting expensive and exhausting. This fund changes that. Makes fighting free. The fund launched with 12 cases in pipeline. Customers identified during FirstLight discovery. People with stories like Marcus's. We're going to sue every bank that discriminates, David announced. And we're going to win. Because the law is on our side. Data is on our side. And now resources are on our side too. 6 months later, FirstLight's annual civil rights report was released. Required by settlement, published publicly. Data showed progress. Police calls on black customers dropped 73%. Suspicious activity reports more equitable. Verification protocols restructured. Not perfect, but measurable improvement. With note from Thomas Brennan. This report represents beginning of our commitment, not the end. Decades of discriminatory practices cannot be fixed in 1 year. But we're committed to transparency, accountability, continuous improvement. We thank Marcus Thompson for forcing us to confront truths we should have addressed decades ago. Marcus read it in his new office, not Codebridge that was gone, but Thompson Digital Ventures, VC firm funding black and brown tech entrepreneurs struggling to access traditional financing. What do you think? Jamal asked. It's a start, but starts don't mean anything if they don't lead somewhere. You going to keep pushing? Until banking discrimination is extinct or I am. Whichever comes first. That evening, Marcus received email from Maya Whitmore. Mr. Thompson, I hope it's okay I'm writing. My dad gave me your info. I wanted to thank you for what you said about my essay, and for the Banking Justice Fund. I'm applying to colleges to study civil rights law. Because of you. You showed me fighting injustice isn't optional. It's necessary. Thank you for refusing to accept less than you deserved. It taught me I don't have to either. Maya, Marcus replied. Maya, I'm proud of you. Not just for wanting to study law, but for understanding the world needs people who refuse to accept injustice as normal. Your dad made a terrible mistake, but he did the hardest thing, admitted it, understood why it was wrong, and committed to being better. That's rare. And the fact that you're learning from his mistakes, instead of defending them, says everything about the person you're becoming. Apply to law school. Fight for justice. And if you ever need a reference letter, call me, Marcus. He hit send, pulled up the photo he'd taken a year ago. The $1 million check. Framed, now. Not because of the amount, but because it represented something bigger. Proof that refusing to accept discrimination, even wrapped in professional language and corporate policies, could create change extending far beyond one person's experience. The check had been worth $1 million, but the fight had been priceless. 2 years after the incident, Marcus received an invitation he didn't expect. Richard Whitmore's non-profit Financial Literacy for All was hosting a fundraiser, honoring Marcus as their social justice champion for establishing the Banking Justice Fund and forcing systemic change. Marcus's first instinct was to decline. Being honored by the man who'd discriminated against him felt complicated. But he thought about Maya, about Richard's work, teaching financial literacy in communities banks had historically excluded, about the messy process of people trying to be better. He accepted. The event was small, maybe 100 people. Community leaders, non-profit workers, formerly incarcerated people learning to rebuild credit, immigrants navigating American banking. Richard introduced him. 2 years ago, I made the worst decision of my professional life. I looked at Marcus Thompson and saw someone who didn't fit my narrow, prejudiced idea of success. What I didn't see was an entrepreneur who'd built something valuable, a 15-year customer, a human being who deserved basic respect. Marcus could have taken FirstLight's settlement and walked away. Instead, he fought. Not just for himself, but for everyone who'd experienced what he experienced. He forced an entire industry to confront its discrimination, created resources so others could fight back. That's not just courage, that's leadership. And I'm honored he's here tonight, even though I'm the last person who deserves his presence. Marcus took the stage, looked at the audience of people who understood discrimination because they'd lived it. I didn't fight FirstLight for recognition, Marcus said. I fought because staying silent meant accepting that black success is suspicious, that our wealth needs more verification, that we deserve less benefit of the doubt. And I refused to accept that. Richard Whitmore discriminated against me, that's fact. But it's also fact, he's spent 2 years trying to do better. Not to earn forgiveness, I'm not sure that's mine to give, but to make sure his mistake doesn't keep happening. That matters, not because it erases what he did, but because accountability without possibility of redemption just creates more harm. So if you've experienced discrimination, fight, document it, report it. Use the Banking Justice Fund if you need legal help. But also know that fighting doesn't mean you can never acknowledge when people try to change. Both things can be true. Someone can have wronged you and also be working to right that wrong. After the event, Maya approached, 19 now. First year at Howard University. Mr. Thompson, thank you for coming. And for what you said about my dad. How's Howard? Hard, good, learning so much about systemic injustice, about how laws and policies create inequality while claiming neutrality. Exactly what you proved with FirstLight. Law school? Already preparing for LSAT. Want to be a civil rights attorney, like David Chen, like the lawyers at your fund, people who fight for change instead of just talking about it. Marcus smiled. Then, fight well. And remember, you're not responsible for your father's mistakes, but you are responsible for what you do with the lessons they taught you. I know. And, Mr. Thompson, thank you for refusing to let him or anyone get away with discrimination. You changed my dad's life. But you also changed mine. You showed me what justice looks like when someone's brave enough to demand it. 3 years after the check that changed everything, Marcus sat in his Thompson Digital Ventures office, reviewing a funding proposal from Terrell Jackson. Young black entrepreneur, built an app connecting small businesses with microloans, bootstrapped with barbershop savings, 3,000 active users, growing revenue. Traditional VCs passed, said market was too niche. Team lacked institutional experience. Code words Marcus recognized. Code words meaning Terrell didn't look like what VCs expected. Marcus approved funding, $500,000. First check from Thompson Digital Ventures into a company led by a black founder building solutions for communities white finance ignored. Why? Terrell asked when Marcus called. You've never met me. I know you built something 3,000 people find valuable. I know traditional finance rejected you for reasons having nothing to do with your business model. And I know if someone had funded me building CodeBridge, I wouldn't have had to max out credit cards and risk everything. So yeah, I'm funding you. Because the system that didn't believe in me doesn't get to stop believing in people like us. Thank you. I won't let you down. You won't. Because you're not building for me. You're building for your community. That's the only metric that matters. Marcus hung up, looked at the framed check on his wall, at the $1 million that sparked a movement, at proof that refusing to accept discrimination didn't just change banks, it changed futures. That evening Marcus received one final message. From someone he'd never expected to hear from again, Jessica, the young teller who'd first taken his check at FirstLight, who'd panicked and called Richard Whitmore, who'd watched everything unfold. Mr. Thompson, I don't know if you remember me. I was the teller that day. I want you to know I quit FirstLight 6 months ago, not because I was fired, because I couldn't work somewhere that treated people the way we treated you. I'm in grad school now, studying social work. Want to help people navigate systems designed to exclude them. I know an apology doesn't change what happened, but I'm sorry for my part in it. And thank you for fighting. It changed how I see the world. Jessica. Marcus stared at the message. Thought about ripples. About how one moment of refusing to accept injustice could change not just policies and institutions, but individual people who witnessed it. He replied, Jessica, thank you for this message. And thank you for choosing to be part of solutions instead of problems. The world needs more social workers who understand how systems harm people. Good luck in grad school. And remember, you're not defined by the worst thing you witnessed or participated in. You're defined by what you choose to do after. NFR Marcus. He set down his phone. Stood at his office window overlooking Manhattan. Somewhere out there, banks were still calling police on black customers, still applying verification protocols that looked like discrimination, still treating wealth as suspicious when it came in the wrong color skin. But also out there, 12 lawsuits funded by the Banking Justice Fund, Keisha Williams pulling data at Metro Financial, Maya Whitmore studying civil rights law, Terrell Jackson building his microloan app, Jessica learning to be a social worker who understood systemic harm. And Marcus Thompson, entrepreneur, investor, justice advocate, waking up every day and choosing to keep fighting. Not because discrimination was gone, but because the only way to make it gone was to refuse to stop until it was. Some battles are won in courtrooms, some are won in boardrooms, some are won by simply refusing to disappear when people expect you to. Marcus chose all three, every single day. Because 3 years ago, a bank manager looked at him and saw a criminal instead of a customer. And Marcus had decided that was the last time anyone would make that mistake without consequences. The check was long deposited, the money long invested, the company long sold, but the fight was forever.